So I got a lot of comments from one of my videos where we created a dog application saying that the API is no longer in use, or rather like some things changed on the API, as you can see from these comments right here. So this video is a follow-up to these comments, and I hope that is going to be helpful. We're not going to be creating a React application, but we're going to be creating a React native application. The API has changed just a bit because now we need an API key in order to access the content. But if you want to transform this application into a React application on the web, then you can do it very, very easily. The only difference is that where you're not going to be using the React native components. So here is a demo of the application. And so what I'm going to do is open up my terminal, and then I'm going to cd into my desktop. And inside my desktop, I have a folder called mobile apps. And inside this folder, I'm going to say npx create-expo-app, and I'm going to call this the real dog app. And then I'm going to let this execute, and then once it's done, we are going to continue. So once it's done, it creates a folder for me that is called the real dog app. So I'm going to cd into that folder. So cd the real dog app, and then I'm going to open up an instance of Visual Studio Code into this folder by saying code dot. And so once it opens up, you can see that we have our file structure on the left, and then I'm mirroring my phone screen on the right. So if you take a look in the package.json, we're going to be installing React navigation to help us with routing within our screens. And if you take a look at app.js, we're only showing the text here that says open up app.js to start working on your app. So I'm going to open up my terminal using Ctrl-J, and then I'm going to say npx expo start. And this is going to open up our expo server, which, as you can see on my phone right here, if we execute this, then it's going to show our application running on our operating system, and then we can just run it on our phone. So let this run, and then we're going to continue. And as you can see right there, so this is our app running on our operating system. So if I open this up, it's going to bundle it and then build it. And we're only showing some text here. So once it loads in, we should only be able to see this text right here. Now, as that is loading, I want to go ahead and go into React navigation because we need to go ahead and begin installing our dependencies. So I'm going to add my terminal here, and we're going to have a new terminal. So as that is opening up, let's also open up our browser. So inside our browser, let's go ahead and search for React navigation. So React navigation, and we don't want the material bottom tabs, but we want the native stack. So we're going to go inside the native stack, and before we can begin to install the native stack, we need to go ahead and first install the React native and its dependencies. So React navigation native and its dependencies before you can install this. So let's just click on this link, and then let's go ahead and install this. So copy this, and then back inside VS Code inside our terminal, let's just paste it in and then run it. And then we're going to copy this because we're using expo. So make sure that you're copying the correct command. If you're using expo, this is the command. If you're not using expo, then this is the command. So we are in expo, so we have this. So copy and then paste it here once the previous command finishes running. And then let's go ahead and say this. We are not building for iOS, so we don't need to do this. We can skip this step. But of course, if you're on iOS, you can do this step. And that should be it, because this is going to be inside our application. So now we can go back. And when you go back, then we want to go ahead and install React navigation native stack. So copy this and then paste it inside here. Let it run. And then that should be it for our navigation. Okay, so remember how we were already running our application? You can see that we only have some text on the screen that says this. So if we go ahead and change this text, so let's just change it to some lorem ipsum, so lorem 15, and then save it, then we should get the updated text on our device. Now, I'm not going to be using these style sheets here. Instead, I'm going to be using Tailwind CSS because it's going to be faster for development, because I don't want to dwell on this too much. And so what I'm going to do once again is open up my terminal, and then inside my terminal, I'm going to go ahead and install Native Wind, which is Tailwind CSS for the native platform. So Native Wind, let's go ahead into that website. And then we have already done this step. We have done this step. So all we need to do is now install Native Wind. and then install Tailwind CSS version 3.3.2. And this is very important because the higher versions of Tailwind CSS don't work with native Wind version 3, which is the current one. But if you want to use the higher versions, then you need to upgrade to native Wind version 4, which is currently in beta, I think. Yeah, as you can see right there. So let's go ahead and say npm install native Wind. So npm install native Wind, and then let it run. And then we are going to copy this second command once it finishes running. So copy, and then we can paste in that command to install Tailwind CSS. So let it run, and there we go. And then let's just confirm that there is nothing else. We need to go ahead and say npx Tailwind CSS init, which is going to create our Tailwind config file. So let's copy and paste it inside here. And then we're going to copy this content path. And once we copy it, this is just to tell the application to look in certain directories or files for JS files, JSX files, TypeScript files, and TSX files, and check for Tailwind classes within them, and then filter them out from your application as Tailwind classes. So let's go ahead and do, sorry, that should not be there. It should be inside our Tailwind config.js, and then just replace this content here, and then remove the extra comma. Now for the custom directory, we're going to replace this with / components, and then we're going to copy this, the string once again, paste it in, and then we're going to substitute this to with screens, because we're going to create a folder that is called components, and then we're going to create another folder that is called screens, and then for the /app is just basically our app.js. So save it, and this is what we're going to have for the content of our application. And once we do that, then I think this is the final thing. We need to configure our Babel config. We need to add in the native Wind plugin. So just copy this, and then inside our Babel config.js, so you can just paste it in on the bottom as a plugin. So we are adding the native Wind plugin, and then once we save that, you can now take a look at our application. Nothing should change. We should still be seeing the lorem ipsum. But then now if I go into my app.js, inside my text, I can go ahead and add in a class name here and say text rows 400. And now the text should now change. Or you know what? It doesn't, because we changed a config file. Yes, we changed something in the Babel config. So we need to restart our server. So shut it down, and then npx export that once again, so that it loads in the new values from our Babel config, which has the Tailwind CSS, or rather the native Wind plugin. So once it reloads, we can just go ahead inside our terminal and hit the R key, which is going to reload our application. And then once it finishes, we should see the updated text on the screen. Okay, so our application reloads, but it doesn't seem to have any effect. I don't want to dwell on this too much, so let's just go ahead and begin building out our routing. So we're going to remove everything inside our app.js, and then we're going to say import navigation container. And you know what, I think this font, or rather I think the zoom level is a bit down, so let's modify it. Let's go inside our settings JSON with the zoom level. Let's change this to 2, so that this is a bit bigger, and then let's change this to 16 for the font size. I think that's much better. I think that's more visible in the video. So let's say import navigation container from @react navigation what's it called? @react navigation native. Is it native or native stack? Okay, let's just go ahead and check it. So sorry, this is native. No, it should be React navigation. Where is it? React navigation stack. Okay, wait, that's not the correct one. Where's the navigation container? That is not the correct one. Oops. I should go inside here, and then inside here, and then it should be React navigation native. Okay, so React navigation native, that is correct. And then we need to go ahead and import create native stack navigator from @react navigation native stack. And then we can define our stack, because in React Native, pages are defined as stacks. So you can think of it like a stack of papers, where if you remove one paper from the top, you are removing one page from your application. And then when you place it back on the top of the stack, then you place back the original page that you had removed. So const stack is equal to create native stack navigator, and then we're going to go ahead and say export default function app, and then inside here we're going to return our navigation container, which is going to be the wrapper for our entire application. And then we're going to say stack.navigator, and then inside here we're going to say stack.screen, and the name for this first one is going to be the home screen, and then the component that is going to be rendering is going to be the home component. It's a component, but it's going to be, we're going to create it as a screen inside the screens folder. And then let's copy this down, and then let's just call this dog, because we're going to be building a dog app. So for the internal page that we're going to create, we're just going to render the dog in singular. And then let's go ahead and create these two files. So inside our workspace, let's create a new folder that is called screens. And then inside here, let's create our home.js, and then let's just say React Native function, so RNF, and then save it. And then let's create another one that is called dog.js, so RNF, and then save it. And the way I'm doing that is because of an extension that I have that is called React. This one is called ES7 Plus React Redux and React Native Snippets. So you can go ahead and install this, and you'll be able to do the shorthand properties as demonstrated. Now let's go ahead and import these two. So control spacebar right here, and then control spacebar right here, and it should give you really, okay, let's just go and do it manually. Oops. Let's import dog from dog, save it. And wait, did I do that correctly? Okay, it's correct. So now our application should update, and we should only be able to see home if I am correct. So let's just force reload it because it's taking a while. Okay, there we go. So you can see that now we have the home, and this header here is because of React navigation. And then we have the text that says home because this is coming from our component. So if you changed it to something like homepage, then the text here would update as well. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I don't want this header to be visible by default. So inside my app.js, inside my stack navigator, I'm going to pass in a prop here that is called screen options. And then inside screen options, I'm going to go ahead and say header shown, and then pass in false, which is going to remove the header from every single page that we're going to have. And then let's also go ahead and fix our status bar. So for the status bar, and make sure that you import it from expo status bar, and you can place this on top. We can go ahead and say that the style is going to be auto, and we can give it a background color, but the background color right now, I can't remember the hex value for it because it's coming from Tailwind, but I'm going to get it, and then we're going to be able to fix our background color inside here. So let's just leave it as that for now, and that should also update our status bar, as you can see right there. So now let's begin building this out. So inside our home page, we're not going to be rendering a view by default. We're going to be rendering a safe area view. So a safe area view, and then make sure that you import this from React Native safe area context. And once we do that, then we can go ahead and paste in our view that we just had. And what you'll notice is that now the home page is pushed down. So what the safe area view does is that it calculates this space for the status bar and then pushes down your content so that it doesn't go above or under your status bar. So your content is always going to be visible. Now, once we render our safe area view, I also want to go ahead and render a scroll view. And what a scroll view does is that when the content is greater than the height of your device, then it automatically introduces a scrollable view. So it's going to allow you to scroll your content. And now let's go ahead and just say control spacebar here and then import it from React Native. So save it, and then that error should go away. Now inside scroll view, I'm going to go ahead and give it a class name, and I'm going to give it a class name of padding around of 4, which is going to push everything inwards just a bit. And there we go. So you can see that Tailwind is working. And so now let's go ahead and build out the custom header for our homepage. So right below the safe area view, I'm going to render another view. So render a view inside here. And then inside this view, I'm just going to render some text that says the real dog app. And once I save it, then the text should appear right there. And then inside the view, let's give it a class name of bg-slate-100. And we should have a slight background color change. But the reason why there's no background color change, we can't really see it. It's there, but you can't really see it is because by default, this has a background color of white. So inside the safe area view, let's give it a class name of flex-1 and bg white. And you know what, just to demonstrate, let me say bg rows 400, and you see that this now takes up a bg rows 400, and you can now see our bg slate right there. So I don't want this to be rows, instead I want it to be white. So there we go. So you can see our slate background color. Let's give it a padding all around of 4, and then let's say padding all around of 4 here. And then on the text, let's go ahead and say give it a class name of font dash bold and text dash base. So text dash base, and then text dash center, which now push it to the center right there. And then let's change the color as well. So text slate dash, I can do like 800 should be good. That should be fine. Now I want to get the hex value for bg slate 100. So let's go ahead into Tailwind CSS. So Tailwind CSS colors, and inside here we want to get the slate 100, and you can see that this is the hex value. So let's go ahead and grab this. So copy, and then inside our app.js and inside our status bar, we're going to give it a background color of hashtag what we just copied, and that should now go ahead and merge the background color for the status bar as well. So it looks like it's a continuous thing, right? So that is looking nice. Now inside our homepage, this is what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and separate this out a bit so that it's better viewable. Now what we want to do is the following. We want to render a view which is going to be the parent for every single item that we're going to get back. And then inside this view, we're going to have another view, and we're going to have a bunch of them. And these views are going to be populated by the content that we're going to get back. So inside this view, let's go ahead and give it a class name of padding all around of 4 and rounded dash large. And then let's give it a border, and then border dash slate dash, let me say something like 300. And then inside here, let's pass in some text. So text, and then let's just say lorem 15, and then enter. And then I just want to see what we're going to have. So this is going to be the text, and then we're also going to add in an image for the particular dog, right? So we're going to add in an image and then the name of the dog, and then when you click on it, we're going to go inside an inner page. Okay, so now that we have this structure out of the way, what we need to do next is we need to go ahead and get our data from our API. And so we're going to be using the real, what's it called? We're going to be using the dog API. So the dog API, let me just go ahead and get it. So it's called TheDogApi.com. And so there we go. So this is their homepage. And what we need to do is we're going to be sending a request similar to this. So let's just go ahead and copy that actually. Let's just copy this. Okay, and then let's go ahead and paste it somewhere. So let's paste it above, right before our return. So paste it here. So you can see that we are defining the headers that we want to go ahead and send when we are making the get request. And then we have some request options. So inside here, we're passing in the method that is the get, and then we pass in the headers that we've just defined on top. And then we pass in a redirect as well. And then this is the endpoint that we're going to be hitting. And then this is the endpoint that we're going to be hitting in order to get a particular request back. And then we're passing in our request options, which we have defined on top. Now for the response here, we don't want to return text, we want to return JSON. So you can change that to JSON. And then we're going to do something else. We're going to change this up a bit, so don't worry about it. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create our state values. So I'm going to say const dogs and set dogs is equal to use state, and by default is going to be an empty array. And then I'm going to say const is loading for our loading state, and set is loading is going to be equal to use state, and by default is going to be true. Now let's go ahead and import use state. So import use state from React, and then let's go ahead and cut this entire thing out. So cut it out, and then we're going to say async function get dogs. So get dogs, and then we can paste in our function, and then right below our function we're going to call our use effect, which we also need to import from React. So make sure that you import it from React. So inside use effect, we're going to say pass in our callback function and an empty dependency array so that the function only runs on the initial render. And then we're going to call our function that is called get dogs right there. And then now let's go ahead and modify this a bit, because we need to go ahead and populate our state value once we fetch our data. So we're going to save this. Let me change this to async await. I don't want to do all this. So let me go ahead and grab this part, cut it out, and then I'm going to say const res is equal to await fetch, and we are fetching this. Oops, pass it inside your what's it called, quotation marks, and then const data is equal to await res.json. And then I've forgotten something. We need to go ahead and pass in request options here. So request options, there you go, and then we can remove this part. That should be okay. So once we get back our data, we need to go ahead and say set dogs into the data that we get back. So let's see, is that correct? That should be correct. Now let's go ahead and say set is loading to true on top, and then once we fetch our data here, once we populate our state value, we're going to say set is loading to false, and that should be okay. Now for the demo API key, what you need to do is the following. If you go ahead and click on this button to get your API key, you can use the free tier right here. So you can say get free access, and then when you sign up and you submit, it's going to send the API key to your email. So let me go to my email and then get my API key. And there we go. So this is my API key, which has been sent to my email. So I can just copy this, and make sure that you use your own API key, by the way. So once it's generated, it's going to be sent to you. So you can copy that, and then we can exchange it right here for the demo API key. Just paste it in. And then now, if everything is working correctly, nothing should change on the screen. So let's save it, and nothing should change. Okay. But then now we can go ahead and say this. We can just go ahead and say console log the data. Oops, not data, but the data. And then if we now open up our terminal, then look at this. We are getting an array of objects that is called breeds here. See that right there? Now, I don't want to do this. Instead, I want to go ahead and open up Postman, because we can better visualize our data in Postman. So inside Postman, and let me make this full screen because it's going to be easier. So when you log into your Postman account, and Postman is just a platform for testing out your backend APIs. So you can use it to test out APIs, by the way, how you can send requests to your APIs and so on and so forth. So inside here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new request. So if I create a new request here, we want to go ahead and hit, where is it? Let's go back. Okay, there. So we want to go ahead and hit this endpoint. So let's copy this up to there. So copy and then paste it here. You can see that we have the order here, we have the page and the limit, which are just embedded. Let me zoom in. They are embedded in the get request. So where is it? We have the order. Come on, I can't find it. Okay, so the order here, so the ampersand order appends this so the value is random, and then the page is 0, and then the limit is 1. So we're only going to get one breed that is returned to us. And then what we need to do is we need to go ahead and pass in our headers. So inside the headers tab right here, we can go ahead and pass in the headers that were created here. So content type should be application JSON, and then the X API key should be this one. So let's copy this, and then let's add in a content type. So content dash type, and then the value should be application dash slash JSON, and then the X dash API dash key should be our API key. So just paste in your API key right there. And then let's see, is there anything else? The method is a get request, so that has already been set here. But I think that should be everything. That should be everything. So that now, if you go ahead and say send, we should get back a status of 200, and then we should get back one item. So you can see we get back a status of 200, meaning our get request is working. And as you can see, we only get back one item. So it is an array of objects. So if I change the limit here to, let's say 5, and then send the get request again, then now we get back 5 items, as you can see. So that's how you can play around with the limit. But you can see that for every breed that we have an object here that is called breeds, and then breeds is an array that has a bunch of items. And then outside of the breeds array, we get the ID, we get the URL of the dog, we get the width and the height of the image. So let's go ahead and begin to get this from here and then display it on our application. So let's shrink this, or rather expand it a bit. And what we want to do is the following. Inside our home page, we're going to do this. I'm going to go inside this view, the first view, and then I'm going to say when is loading is true, we want to render what is called an activity indicator. And this should be coming from React Native. We're going to give it a size of large and then close it out. And then when is loading is false, meaning when you're finished fetching our data, then we want to go ahead and render out this view. So if I save it, we should see a loading indicator and then our content loads in. So that is working nice. Now we don't want to render this view inside here. This is just for demonstration. So we can go ahead and remove the text. But then what we need to do is the following. We need to go ahead and cut this out. And then we need to say dogs.map, because dogs is our state value right here, which is populated when this get request is run. So we need to say dogs.map. And then for every single dog that we get back, which is the object that we're going to get back, then we want to go ahead and render out a view. And you know what? We're not going to be using a view. We're going to be using what is called pressable. And pressable just renders a pressable component. I mean, it's in the name, right? So we want to render out pressable. And then inside the pressable component, we want to render out some text here that says dog.name, I think should be it. And you know what? It's in the name of the dog is right here, which is inside the breeds array. So we need to go ahead and say dog.breeds. And now this should be outside the text. So dog.breeds.map, that should be right. And then for every breed that we get back, then we should be able to render out some text here that says breed.name, right? Let's save this. Let's pray that something breaks. There we go. So pressable doesn't exist. So we just need to import this from React Native, save it again, and then now we should render out there. Okay. So we are rendering out the name of the dog, right? Now it says each child should have a unique key. So inside the pressable component, let's go ahead and render the dog.id. Now inside here is the pressable component, which is mapping over the entire data that we get back. But then we are also mapping over the breeds here, meaning even this text should have a unique key. And for this one, I'm just going to say the index. I'm going to get the index of the item, meaning we can also destructure, or rather we can also get the index of the particular array item. So that should be fine. So when you save it, then this error should disappear. There we go. And by the way, it's random. It's completely random because of the order that I've set it here. Now I don't know whether if we say something like ASC should return in ascending order. Let's try that. That should be fine, right? I think that works. But then once again, I don't want to return one item. So for this particular demonstration, I'm going to get back 10 items, and we should see 10 items right there. Looking fantastic. Now let's go ahead and style this out to look better. So inside, let's see, should be what? Should be inside the pressable component. Oops. So inside the pressable component, I'm going to go ahead and add, come on, can this be visible? Let's go ahead and say add a margin bottom of 4, which is going to add a margin bottom on each of the pressable components that we get back, so that we have this kind of grid looking thing. And by the way, this is the scroll view. See how we can now scroll, right? That is the scroll view. Now for the scroll view, I want to add some padding bottom, and I mean the padding on top is okay, but I want to add some padding bottom so that this doesn't really touch our navigation bar on the bottom. So inside the scroll view, we can add a prop here that is called content container style. And then inside here, you can add a padding bottom of, let's say, about 20, which is going to add this padding bottom, this padding on the bottom. Now, for some reason, if you add a padding bottom on the scroll view, like a class name as you have seen here, or if you pass it in as a style, it doesn't work. But if you use the content container style and then add the padding bottom, then it works. So that is the preferred method that I use. Now let's see this. Let's go ahead and get the image. So we need to get the image next. Now the image is not inside the breed, but the image is inside the initial mapping that we have done right here. So let's go ahead and get the image from React Native. So always make sure that you're importing it right there. I'm using shorthand imports. So when I type in a component, I just say Control Spacebar, and then it gives me a drop down, and then I just auto import it. Now the image here, the source for this is going to be URI because we are getting it from a URL, and then it's going to be dog.url. I think that is it. Dog.url right here. This is the URL to the image, and then the width for this, let's give it as a class name. So the class name here is going to be width-full and height-52 and object-contain, no, object cover, and then what's it called, object top, so that the image is always placed on top. That should be it. Let's save it, and now we should be able to see our images right there. There we go. Look at that, looking nice. Now let's style out the image to look a bit better. So let's say rounded-large, and then margin bottom of 4 to push away from the text, and then let's style out the text as well. Let's give it a class name, and let's say font bold and text dash base and text slate 800 and text dash center, and this should now push to the center. Look at that, looking nice. Now this is how our homepage looks like, and I just noticed I want to get rid of this scroll bar right here. See, it's barely visible, but I want to get rid of it. So the way you do that is you can go ahead inside the scroll view, and then you can pass in another prop that is called shows horizontal, or rather vertical, because this is vertical. Horizontal is this one. So shows vertical scroll indicator, it is a boolean, so if you pass it in as false, then you're not going to be able to see the scroll bar. As you can see, I think that is much better for me. Now all you need to do is just go ahead and work on our click event right here. So remember how we were mapping over the dogs here, and then we're getting back the dog object. So when we want to go ahead and pass this into our screen that we created initially, that is called dog, the way we do that is we add in an onPress event here, and then we're going to say onPress. We want to call our navigation dot navigate, and we want to navigate into the page that we created called dog, and this has to be similar to what you called it inside here. Otherwise it's going to think that it's a different screen. Now once you do that, then you can go ahead and pass in the dog object. In this case it's the dog object, but if you had another object, if you give it another name, then you pass in that particular name inside here. And then what this does is that it ensures that this screen has access to this object, and that is going to be particularly useful because we want that when we click on a particular item here, that it gives us information about that particular dog only without interfering or giving us much more information, right? So let's go ahead and save that, and then inside our dog page, so inside here, we're going to go ahead and destructure the route. And then let me show you something. If I go ahead and render the route.params.name, sorry, it's not even the dot name, is the dot name, where's the dot name really? Route.params, let me render, let's just go ahead and render the image. Let's just render the image to show that it is working. So image, control spacebar to import it. The source for this is going to be URI, and then route.params.url, and then give it a class name of width-full and height-64 and object-cover, and then that should be fine. Now if I go ahead and save this and I click on this dog that is called the Akbash, then it should go into an inner page, and you can see it says navigation does not exist. That is because we need to destruct it. We're using it here, but it doesn't have access to it, so we need to destruct it inside our declaration here, and we need to say navigation. And then when I save it, and then let's click on it once again, you can see that we get that particular dog. And if I go back, click on this one, you can see that we get that one. So our application is working as we expect it to work. Now I want to change something. See how by default on Android, when you implement React navigation, it is a fade in and fade out transition. Now I don't really particularly like that. So inside our app.js and inside our screen options, we're going to go ahead and pass in, and we're going to say gesture enabled and set this to true. And then we're going to pass in our animation, and the animation here, we're going to set it to slide from right. So slide underscore from underscore right. And when I save that, now look at this. When I click on this one, then now it slides in, and when I go back, it slides out. That is a much better animation for me, and I particularly prefer that one. But by default in iOS, this is the default one in iOS. Okay, so that is looking nice. So now let's begin to work on our dog page. And once again, we don't want to render this view. We want to render a safe area view from React Native safe area context. And then inside here, you know what, we want to render a scroll view as well. So scroll view, and then save it. And then inside the scroll view, give it a class name of padding all around of 4, and then content container style, give it a padding bottom of 20. And then we want to go ahead and say shows vertical scroll indicator, set it to false as well, and then save that. And then you can see that now our image is pushed inwards. Let's style out the image. Let's give it a rounded dash large so that it matches up with what we had on the home screen. Now let's go ahead and add in our header right here. So for that, I'm going to create a new component. You don't have to do this. You can do it inside here because we only have 2 pages for this particular application. But I want to show you something interesting that you can do. So if you go ahead and create a new folder here that is called components, and then inside here you can create a header.js, and then inside header.js you can say RNF, so React Native function. And then when you save that, and then we go back inside our dog page, so our dog.js, we can go ahead and render the header. And I'm rendering it above the scroll view because of a particular reason. So let me just show you let me just copy this image like a few more times so that this is scrollable. See how it is, our content is scrollable, right? But the header is always on top. But if I move the header inside our scroll view, then what happens is our header now scrolls with our scroll view. Now, when you scroll down, we can't see our header. I don't want that to happen. So that's why I'm rendering it above the scroll view. And what I've just done there, by the way, I just noticed, is you hold down the Alt key and then you press up or down according to the direction that you want to go. So once you save that, let's go ahead and remove all these extra images because they were just for demonstration. And then let's go ahead and do this. We want our header to have access to the navigation prop. So navigation is equal to navigation. And then let's also destructure the navigation. And then we want access to the route as well. So route is equal to route, so that I can go inside my header component. And instead of just rendering some text here, what I want to do is I want to render an icon. So the icon is coming from a component called intypo. The name is going to be chevron dash, what's it called? Chevron dash left. And then the size for this is going to be 28. And then the color is going to be hashtag 111827, which is a very dark slate color. And then let's import it. So import intypo from @expo/vector icons slash intypo. Is that how you import it? I've forgotten how you import it. Let's save it. Let's see if anything breaks. No. Okay, so this should not be here. So save it once again. Reload, Control J. Let's open up our terminal and then hit R to reload. So let's go back into the inner page. Let's see. Okay, so our icon is now showing. And then now inside the header, we want to go ahead and destructure the navigation. And then we want to also go ahead and destructure the route. And the reason why we are able to do this is because we have passed them inside here as props. So now instead of just rendering the text that says header, I want to go ahead and say render the route dot params dot breeds right dot breeds, and then I want to access the first, is it the first? Let's check. The breeds, I want to access the first object, which is this entire object really, and then I want to get the name. That should be it, breed 0 dot name, and then save it, and then now it should show the name of the dog. There we go. And then give this a class name of font dash bold and text slate 800. That should be fine. And then inside the view, give this a class name of padding on the X of 4, and then give it a flex of row, and then items dash center and justify dash between, and then that is going to go there, looking fantastic. Now the flex, or rather the padding of 4 here is looks much, let's say padding right. Let me see what happens here. So this button has a padding on the left already. Let me say padding left of 2. Yeah, I think that is just to make it uniform. Now for this icon, I want that when I click this icon, then it takes me back to the home page. So I'm going to transform this icon into another component that is called touchable opacity, and make sure that you import it from React Native once again. Now what touchable opacity does is that it reduces the opacity when you click on it, as you can see right there. So I want that when I click on this, then it takes me back to the home page. So I'm going to pass in my prop here called onPress, and then onPress I'm going to say navigation dot go back, meaning go back to the last page that you are on. So when I click on this, it takes me back, and then when I click on this, it takes me forward, and then when I click on it, it takes me back. And as you can see, the name is updating here depending on the particular dog that you're viewing. That is looking nice. Now let's work on our dog page here. So for this dog page, what we want to do is inside this view, we're rendering the image. Now we want to go ahead and render the name of the dog as well. So we're going to say route.params.breeds, and we want to access the first object and then render the name, which is going to appear right there. Let's style this out to be a bit bigger. So give it a class name of text-xl font-bold, and then text slate 800. And we're going to have that. Give it a margin top of, let me not give the margin top here. Let me go inside the parent view and then give it a general class name called space-y-4, which is going to check for every particular element that we're going to be adding inside here, and then it's going to be adding a margin on the top and bottom of 4 for every element. So that is much better. Now let's see, is there a description for this? So temperament, I mean, all of this I want to place them a certain way. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to say that we want the name is already being rendered, so we want the weight, the height, the breed group, lifespan, temperament, only this one. So we want these 4. So breed 4. So we're going to do the following. We're going to render a view, and then inside this view we're going to render 2 text components. Oops, copy and paste. So this first one is going to be breed 4, and then this second one is going to say route.params.breeds, access the first object, and then bread_4, and then that should now show that. And then we're going to copy this view, copy and paste it 3 more times. So 1, 2, 3, and then this second one is going to say breed group. So breed group. Let me make this capitalize this as well. So this should now say breed_group, and then the next one says lifespan. So lifespan. This should now say life_span, and then finally it says temperament. So temperament. This should now say temperament. Save it, and we should have 4 items. There we go. Now each of these views is going to be styled a certain way. So give it a class name of bgslate 200. Let's see how dark is that. That should be fine. Padding all round of 2, rounded dash large. Save it. Okay. And then for the text here, give it a class name, and we're going to say font dash bold, and then save it. And then let's say text slate 800. And then for this other text, give it a class name. And we're going to say text slate 600. Save it. Okay. And then let's copy this class name. So copy this, paste it here. Let's click on this, click on this, click on this, paste it here. And then copy this. Oops, copy, don't cut. And then here, paste it in, and then here, and then here. And then finally this one, copy, paste it here, and paste it here, and paste it here. Save it. And there we go. Okay. Now, I just realized something. I want this text to be centered. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to highlight this and then say Control D, Control D, Control D. And then at the end of it all, I'm going to say give this a class name of flex. Oh, sorry, you know what? Items dash center. Okay, item center is going to do that. And then still inside that view, I'm going to give it a space dash y dash 2, which is going to add some bit of spacing between this text and this one. And then let's see. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and grab those 4 views, which are technically our 4 divs. So grab all of them, which ends here, and then place them inside a bigger parent view, like so that I can go inside this parent view, give this a class name of flex-row, which is going to break our application. Nice. And then we need to say flex wrap, which is going to do that. But then I want all of them to have a fixed width. But let's go ahead and add a gap of around 4 just to separate out the items. And then once we do that, then inside each of these, once again, just select this text and then say Control D, Control D, Control D. And I'm going to say, give it a width of about, let's say give it a width of about 150 pixels. Let's see that. There we go. So that now these are always going to be the same width. And you know what? If I change this to flex-1, what happens? Yeah, I don't want that to happen. So let's just have it as width dash 150 pixels. And then, let's see. What we need to do is this. We need the text to be centered. I thought that the flex above here, I thought that the flex, this one, not that one really. I thought that this would center it, but it doesn't center. Let me remove that. Yeah, it doesn't really center it the way I want. So I will need to do that. So let's remove this one. So item center. Let's just remove that. And then inside each of the text components, so right here, I'm going to say text-center, and then copy this and then place it here. Sorry, you know what? It should be pasted here first of all, and then here next, and then here next, center, and then here next, and then here next, and then here next, and then finally here. Save it. So now the text is going to be centered. Fantastic. Now you can also go ahead and add the weight and the height. And I think we can actually do that, right? So all you need to do is just copy this view. Is it correct one? Yes. And then paste it below here, and then below here, and then change this to weight. Let's start with height. So height here, so breadth 0. We need to go ahead and get the height dot imperial, no metric, because the metric system is the best. And then we're going to say centimeters, and then here we're going to say weight, and then change this to weight dot metric, and then kilograms, and then save it. And there we go. So I can give you a challenge, by the way. You can go ahead and try to create a toggle, some kind of toggle where you can toggle between the imperial system and the metric system. And it's quite an easy thing to do. All you need to do is just create a state value which detects whether you are showing the imperial values or whether you're showing the metric values, and then just toggle that state value. And if you don't know how to do that, there's a video that I did about SpaceX, which is 6 hours long, and we created a similar toggle in that video. Somewhere in that video, I can't remember where, but it is in one of the pages. You can just try to look for it, and it's the same logic that is happening here. So once we do that, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go back, And let's click on another one here, and you can see, I mean, the image doesn't look all that nice, right? The image doesn't look all that good. Is it object cover? Let's change it to object contain. Let me see what happens. I mean, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Let me change the height to about 80. I mean, I can change the height to something massive, right? Let's say height 90 something. Is it 96 is the maximum? I think probably let's have it as 96. Now look at this. Look at this. See how I'm scrolling to the bottom, but we can't see our height and weight here. So we need to go ahead and increase the padding bottom here. So let's increase the padding bottom to something like 56. And that should bring it above, right? Let's say 72. That should increase the padding bottom for the content container style. I think that is looking nice. That is looking quite nice. I just noticed something on the header. I want some bit of padding on the top and bottom, or rather maybe on the bottom only. So let's say padding bottom of 4 on the header, so that you just have, okay, that's too much. Let's say padding bottom of 3. Yeah, so that we can just have like some kind of padding on the bottom right here. Fantastic. So I think that is going to be the end of the video. I'm just probably going to need to just deploy this to GitHub. And then of course, if you go back to your home page and then you change this to say random, then it's going to get you a bunch of random dogs every single time that the request is sent. So see that right there? So every single time it's going to get a random dog. Okay, so it all depends on how you want to take this, but I think that is going to be the end of the video. But what I want to do first of all is I want to remove this because I don't want to commit it to GitHub. So I'm just going to say demo-api key, which is just the original value. So place in your demo API key inside here, and then you should be able to have access to this application. Now let me go ahead and create a GitHub repository for all this. So let me close all of this down. Let's shut down our server. Oh, I have a console log somewhere. Let's see. Where's the console log? Should be on the homepage. I have a console log somewhere. This one. Let's remove it. Save it. And then now let's go into GitHub. We can now shut this down. And we can close all of these pages. We can leave the Postman. We don't really need it. So inside my GitHub, I'm going to create a new repository. And I'm going to call this the real dog app, and then it's going to be public, so let's say create repository, and then let's copy this link. Let's go ahead and say git remote add origin, then paste our link, and then git branch dash m main to change it to the main branch, and then git add components and git commit dash m, and I'm going to call this components, or the header component, and then git add screens and git commit dash m, and I'm going to call this app screens, and then git add app.js, git commit set up react navigation, and then git add babel.config.js, and then git commit add native wind plugin, and then git add package star, git commit inst dash small m install react navigation and tailwind css, and git add tailwind.config.js and git commit tailwind config file, and then git push dash u origin main. There we go. And then let's wait for that to finish. And then when we reload our GitHub homepage, we should have that. So there is our application complete.